He had a polished reputation and a promising future. By day, a respected attorney in one of DC's top firms. By night, someone very different. On February 9th, 2015, his body was discovered in a hotel room just blocks from the Capitol. No sign of forced entry, no clear motive. But the truth? It didn't take long to surface, and it left everyone reeling. This is twisted, true crime stories. If real-life cases that challenge what we think we know about people fascinate you, tap subscribe and stay with us. This story unravels secrets that never should have seen the light of day. It started as a routine morning at a boutique hotel in the heart of Washington, D.C., but nothing could have prepared the staff for what they were about to uncover inside room 400 at the Donovan. Tuesday, February 10th, 2015. Housekeeping staff arrive on the fourth floor, expecting a quick turnover of a guest room. But as the door opens, something is off. The room is still. Too still. And then they see it. A man face down on the carpet, lifeless. The man is soon identified as David Messerschmidt, a 30-year-old attorney from the prestigious law firm DLA Piper. He's been stabbed multiple times, but nothing appears stolen. His wallet and phone are still inside the room. What's even more puzzling, there are no signs of forced entry. The door's lock wasn't tampered with. Investigators quickly come to a chilling realization. David likely let his killer in. Detectives immediately secure the crime scene. Every detail is documented. Blood spatter patterns, fingerprints, digital timestamps. Surveillance footage from every hallway and entry point is pulled. Room 400 shows signs of a brief struggle. David's shirt is torn, and the arrangement of furniture suggests movement. But there are no defensive wounds. No bruises on his hands. The attack was sudden, and likely from someone he didn't expect. Detectives examine David's belongings. His laptop is open, his phone unlocked. But one clue grabs their attention. A prepaid Metro card and a small collection of business cards tucked discreetly in his wallet. Some of them from escort services. Outside the room, security footage shows David checking into the hotel the night before. Alone, calm. He stops by the front desk, receives his key, and heads upstairs, never to be seen alive again. But why would a married man with a successful legal career check into a hotel just minutes from his own apartment? And why under his real name? With no sign of robbery, no forced entry, and a murder that seems disturbingly calculated, investigators begin to wonder, was this a crime of opportunity or something deeply personal? What happened behind the closed doors of room 400 would not only spark a criminal investigation, but also peel back the layers of a life no one expected to find. Before he became the center of a murder investigation, David Messerschmidt lived what many would consider an ideal life. He was born in Ohio, quiet, intelligent, and sharply focused from a young age. His academic path was as polished as his professional one. After completing his undergraduate studies at the University of Minnesota, he went on to earn his law degree from George Washington University, an institution known for turning out top-tier legal minds. He wasn't the loudest in the room. In fact, friends described him as thoughtful, soft-spoken, maybe even a little guarded. But he worked hard, really hard. Those who knew him in law school remember a man with drive, someone who didn't just want to practice law, he wanted to excel in it. David found his niche in intellectual property, and eventually he landed at DLA Piper, an international law firm with clients that include major corporations, startups, and government entities. By age 30, he was already managing significant cases and had earned the respect of his peers. In professional circles, David was seen as precise, dependable, and almost obsessively organized. Outside of work, David had a quieter life. He was married to Kim Wong, his college sweetheart. They'd met in Minnesota and built their lives together in Washington, D.C. They lived in a modern condo in Capitol Hill, just a few miles from where he was eventually found. Photos from their wedding show a smiling, affectionate couple. Two people who, from the outside, looked deeply connected. They shared vacations, ran errands together, and from all public accounts, they were happy. No signs of drama, no social media feuds, no whispers of instability. Kim worked in education, a quiet professional life of her own. Together, they painted a picture of stability. But that's the thing about pictures. They only show what's in the frame. Colleagues recall that David often stayed late at the office. Some chalked it up to work ethic. Others say he seemed distracted, especially in the months leading up to his death. He never confided much. He wasn't the kind to overshare. But there were subtle changes, missed calls, unread messages, a certain tension behind his eyes. Even so, no one suspected he was in danger. No one imagined that the polished attorney they saw each day had built a secret world beneath the surface. But the truth, as investigators would later find, was hiding in plain sight. A digital trail, a second identity, and a string of private decisions that would eventually lead him into the path of a killer. He had everything to live for: a career, a marriage, and a future. So what was he doing in a hotel room that night? And who had he let inside? The deeper you look, the more you begin to question. Was David Messerschmidt the man his friends believed he was? Or had he been living two lives all along? With David Messerschmidt dead and no clear signs of robbery or forced entry, DC Metro Police knew they weren't dealing with a random act of violence. Whoever had killed him had been invited in, or at the very least expected. So the investigation began where most modern inquiries do: surveillance footage and digital breadcrumbs. Detectives pulled security video from the Donovan Hotel. The timestamp showed David entering alone the night before, February 9th, just after 8:45 p.m. He was dressed in a dark suit, carrying a small bag, and walked with a sense of purpose. No signs of fear, no hesitation. It looked like he was meeting someone. There was no footage of anyone leaving room 400 afterward, but other cameras captured a woman, unknown at the time, entering the hotel shortly after 9 p.m. and leaving just minutes later. Her face wasn't clearly visible. Her movements were deliberate, in and out. She didn't go to the front desk. She didn't interact with staff. She knew exactly where she was going. Investigators zoomed in on the timeline. David had checked into the hotel using his real name. That struck police as odd. Why use his actual identity for a discreet meeting? Or had he planned for something else? As detectives combed through his personal devices, more questions surfaced. His calendar had no mention of a client meeting, no dinner plans, no call scheduled with his wife. But there was something else, something off the books: a separate email account, a Google Voice number, messages that didn't align with the man his friends knew. Then they found the Craigslist ad. Posted under a pseudonym, the ad was placed in the Casual Encounters section, an area known for anonymous meetups. The wording was discreet but clear. David, or someone using his device, was looking for a private encounter. He had even included preferences and times he'd be available. Detectives traced the replies. Several messages came in. One in particular stood out. It was vague but responsive, and it led to an active text conversation on his secondary phone number. The back and forth was brief, just enough to set up a meeting time and place. Room 400, Donovan Hotel. Monday night. Police now had a chilling realization. David may have orchestrated the meeting that would ultimately lead to his own death. Still, nothing confirmed who he had been talking to. The phone number used by the other party was a burner, untraceable through standard channels. But with the right data tools and help from federal partners, investigators began mapping out possible leads. They checked rideshare data, reviewed phone pings from cell towers near the hotel, cross-referenced timestamps. Slowly, the picture became clearer. David wasn't just the victim of a violent act. He was part of a story that involved calculated deception by someone else, or maybe even by himself. The real turning point came when investigators noticed the pattern. This wasn't David's first time using Craigslist. They discovered older listings, private messages, and even meetups that had taken place in the weeks prior. This wasn't a one-off incident. It was part of a hidden routine. And now, with David dead, those digital fragments were the only voices left to speak for him. Was this simply a private life gone tragically wrong, or something far more targeted? A mysterious online ad had opened a door. Now investigators were about to walk through it. Until this point, David Messerschmidt appeared to the world as many professionals do: diligent, respectable, married. A man with structure, a firm career path, and a quiet, reserved demeanor. But the deeper detectives delved into his digital history, the more contradictions began to surface. Behind the work emails and firm calendar entries was another inbox, one tied to an alias and used strictly for personal, secret communication. Investigators retrieved a trail of posts in Craigslist's casual encounters section, many of them written in David's distinct tone, yet crafted with enough ambiguity to preserve deniability. These were not isolated experiments. They followed a pattern: frequent, careful, anonymous. He had posted using coded language, words that, on the surface, might seem innocent. But in the subtext, they told a very different story, one familiar to anyone versed in discreet online meetups. He described specific preferences, designated safe meeting spots, and emphasized privacy above all else. Each message linked back to a Google Voice number, a secondary line tied to an email address that wasn't under his real name. Through that number, he coordinated encounters, exchanged locations, and confirmed times. Always vague, always brief. A rhythm developed over months, even years. But David wasn't reckless. The communications were spaced out, never sent from his work Wi-Fi, rarely from home. The majority came during lunch hours or while traveling for business. Investigators began to see just how calculated this side of him was. Not impulsive, but strategic. One particular Craigslist ad, posted roughly 1 week before his death, mentioned a meeting with someone for the first time. The replies were quick and purposeful. The tone of the respondent was curious, a bit cagey. They asked questions, confirmed that he was real, and pushed to keep the conversation strictly via text. No phone calls, no pictures, just an address, a room number, and a window of time. That window became the final night of David's life. But detectives noticed something else. There were more replies to David's older ads than anyone initially realized. It became evident that this wasn't his first encounter. There were strings of exchanges from different numbers, some polite, others demanding. Some appeared to ghost him after initial planning. Others, it seemed, had followed through with in-person meetings. The scope of his private life was far larger than anyone expected. Co-workers at DLA Piper described him as quiet, brilliant, and committed. His social media painted a clean, curated image of success. His marriage appeared stable. Vacations, smiling couple photos, anniversary posts. But beneath it all was a part of him that few, if any, knew existed. The revelation sent shockwaves not just through his personal circle, but through the investigators themselves. This wasn't just a man leading a double life. It was a man meticulously maintaining two separate worlds until the boundary collapsed. And in that collapse, he lost everything. How far had these meetings gone? Had he crossed paths with dangerous people before? Was this last rendezvous simply the one that ended in violence? Or were there previous close calls? For detectives, the truth came in pieces, extracted from digital footprints, interviews with past correspondents, and logs from Craigslist servers. And as they started to zero in on a particular pattern, one of the numbers tied to a Craigslist reply pinged again. That number was still active, and that would lead police to someone who wasn't a stranger. They had come to him. If this revelation surprised you, if the idea of someone leading such a layered existence behind a polished surface feels unsettling, subscribe now, because what's coming next only gets deeper. The timeline was tight. David Messerschmitt was last seen entering the Donovan Hotel alone on February 9th, around 8:30 p.m. Less than an hour later, someone else entered, captured by the building's grainy security footage. A young woman, dressed casually, wearing a winter coat with a fur-trimmed hood. Her head was low, her pace calculated, not hurried. She moved through the lobby with quiet purpose, headed directly for the elevator. What caught the investigators' attention wasn't just her arrival, but her exit. Less than 20 minutes later, she was seen leaving the same way she came in. No sign of distress, no call for help. Just a woman calmly walking back into the cold DC night. And in that brief window of time, David Messerschmitt had been stabbed multiple times. Detectives scrutinized the footage. They enhanced frames, zoomed in on key details. Her shoes, the slight bulge in her jacket pocket, the phone in her hand. Despite the poor resolution, her movements were distinct enough. She didn't hesitate at doorways. She didn't appear lost. She knew exactly where she was going. That suggested one thing. This meeting had been arranged in advance. Backtracking through David's communications, the digital trail confirmed it. The Craigslist ad he had posted had received a reply from a number tied to a prepaid phone. Texts exchanged between the two parties showed clear planning. A room number, a time, confirmation messages. And now they had a face. Well, almost. The woman in the footage wasn't identified immediately. She wasn't a hotel guest. No ID had been scanned. No credit card on file. But she hadn't worn gloves, which meant there might be prints. Investigators combed through the room, elevator buttons, and lobby areas. They also secured phone records for all calls made near the hotel cell tower that night. As that work unfolded, a tip came in. A woman named Jamira Galman had been overheard talking about the case. She matched the general appearance of the woman in the video. She was 21, local to the area, and already had a record. Non-violent offenses, but enough for her prints to be on file. When matched against the latent prints recovered from room 400, it was a hit. Police brought Jamira in for questioning. She denied everything at first, said she didn't know David, had never been to that hotel. But when investigators laid out the evidence, the text messages, the surveillance stills, the fingerprint, her demeanor changed. Eventually, she admitted to being the woman in the video, but her version of events painted a very different picture. Jamira claimed she hadn't gone there to meet a stranger for anything intimate. According to her, she had been planning to rob David. Nothing more. She said she found his ad online and responded with a fake persona. The intent, she told police, was to scare him, take what she could, and leave. But something changed in the room. She said David made a move she didn't expect, that he lunged at her, that she panicked. The knife had come from her coat pocket. The attack was sudden, brief, brutal. Afterward, she fled. No money was taken, no valuables. Just the sudden, horrifying event of a situation that, by her own admission, had escalated beyond anything she'd anticipated. But was that the full story? Detectives weren't sure. There were gaps. The precision with which the meeting had been arranged. The calmness with which she left. And most of all, the fact that she had brought a weapon. That didn't feel accidental. More questions began to surface. Was Jamira acting on her own, or had someone else put her up to it? The tone of some of the texts sent to David hinted at multiple voices, inconsistent punctuation, subtle changes in language. Police had a suspect in custody, but they were beginning to suspect that she may not have been the only one involved. A woman walks into a hotel room with a knife, walks out minutes later, and a man is dead. Was it really just a robbery gone wrong, or was something else in play? March 3, 2015. Just under a month after the discovery of David Messerschmitt's body, the Metropolitan Police Department made their move. After matching fingerprints from the crime scene and narrowing down the phone number used in the Craigslist exchange, detectives tracked Jamira Galman to her southeast D.C. neighborhood. She was arrested without incident. The charges, first-degree murder and armed robbery. She didn't say much at first. She kept her eyes down during booking, barely reacting when the cuffs clicked shut. But in the interrogation room, the pressure started to mount. Detectives began walking her through the timeline, showing her surveillance stills, text message transcripts, phone tower pings. Her defenses started to slip. Then came the moment that shifted the course of the case. She asked for a glass of water, and then she said quietly, "I didn't mean to kill him." What followed was a confession, not rehearsed but raw and contradictory. Jamir admitted to responding to David's Craigslist post under a false identity. She said she never intended for it to become violent. She claimed the plan was to meet him under the pretense of an encounter, then rob him, intimidate him, take what she could, and walk away. But she claimed things changed once she was inside the room. According to her, David got nervous. He allegedly reached out to grab her when he realized something wasn't right. She said she panicked, pulled out a knife she'd brought with her, just in case, and stabbed him. Not once, not twice, but over 7 times. The detectives pressed harder. Why bring a knife if this was never meant to escalate? Why stab someone that many times if the goal was just to get out? She had no clear answer. Her version of events was riddled with inconsistencies. She said she didn't remember how she got out of the building, yet surveillance showed her calmly exiting. She claimed she acted alone, but language in some of the text messages suggested otherwise. And perhaps most critically, she denied ever stealing anything. Yet David's wallet was never found. The prosecution team took note. So did the media. Her mugshot spread quickly across headlines, accompanied by words like confession, escort robbery, and deadly Craigslist trap. Behind the scenes, police weren't satisfied. They felt they were only hearing part of the story. There were signs that someone else may have helped plan the robbery. Messages sent from the same phone but with different tone and phrasing. Call logs that hinted at coordination. A second number frequently contacted before and after the crime. One detail in particular stood out. A message sent from Jamira's phone just minutes after the stabbing that read simply, "It's done." To investigators, that didn't sound like something someone says to themselves. It sounded like someone reporting back. And that's when a second name surfaced. Was Jamira telling the full truth or protecting someone else? As detectives widened their scope, a new figure entered the frame. And this one wasn't just behind the scenes. They may have helped set it all in motion. In the weeks following Jamira Gallman's arrest and confession, the case seemed close to resolution. But seasoned detectives weren't convinced. There were gaps in the timeline, questions left hanging, and that one message, "It's done." That short phrase pointed to someone else, someone waiting. A closer look at Jamira's phone records began to tell a deeper story. There was a recurring contact, a woman named Dominique Johnson, 19 years old, no previous criminal history, but her name appeared in texts both before and after the killing. The content of those messages raised eyebrows. They weren't just friends chatting, they were coordinating. Police obtained warrants and pulled full transcripts. The conversations revealed that the idea of setting up a robbery using online personal ads had been discussed more than once. And it wasn't just theoretical. Dominique's tone was methodical, focused. She suggested what to say in the ad, when to meet, and how to make the target feel safe. She even helped write the messages Jamira used to lure David. The text showed Jamira sending updates in real time, including that one final message after leaving the hotel. Dominique's reply, "Okay, hurry back." It was enough. On April 3rd, 2015, just a month after Jamira's arrest, police picked up Dominique Johnson. She was charged with conspiracy to commit robbery, a serious charge with real weight. Unlike Jamira, Dominique didn't speak to detectives. She lawyered up quickly, but the digital trail was damning. Screenshots, call logs, GPS data placing her nearby when the plan was set in motion. And there was motive. Investigators discovered both women were struggling financially. Dominique had been couch surfing and had recently lost her job. Friends later described her as quiet but calculating, not violent but persuasive. Someone who might encourage someone else to act while keeping her own hands clean. The prosecution argued that Dominique had helped construct the trap but stayed behind the scenes, waiting for the aftermath. Her fingerprints weren't in the hotel room, but her influence was everywhere. Prosecutors began preparing to try the case as a team crime, one carried out with the guidance of another. While Jamira's confession gave a raw account of what happened inside room 400, Dominique's involvement revealed what was happening outside it. Two young women, one plan, one dead man. The public reaction was immediate and polarized. Some saw Dominique as the mastermind. Others believed she had no way of knowing things would end in murder. But one thing was certain. The illusion that this was the act of a lone individual had fallen apart. And soon the courtroom would have to decide how much responsibility each woman should carry for what happened that night. 2 arrests, 2 stories, and 1 crime that shattered a life. What happens when the truth is split between confessions and silence? In court, it all comes to a head. As spring turned to summer in 2015, 2 young women found themselves on opposite sides of the same courtroom. Bound not by friendship or loyalty, but by the brutal chain of events that began with a Craigslist message and ended in a blood-stained hotel room. The trial wasn't a spectacle. There were no dramatic cross-examinations or surprise witnesses. Instead, what played out inside the D.C. Superior Court was a series of carefully negotiated plea deals, emotional victim impact statements, and a slow unveiling of motivations too complex to package neatly. Jamira Gallman entered the courtroom first. Dressed in jail-issued khakis and chained at the wrists, She offered no eye contact to the gallery. Her family was present, seated in quiet support. Then came her words, a guilty plea to second-degree murder. It was a deal struck between her defense and prosecutors. In exchange for avoiding a lengthy trial and first-degree charges, Jamira accepted a sentence that would keep her behind bars for decades. She addressed the court briefly. Her voice wavered as she apologized to David Messerschmitt's family, saying she never meant for it to happen the way it did, that she went in expecting to rob someone, not kill them. But to the prosecution, the details didn't matter. She brought the knife. She made the appointment. She followed through. David's widow, Kim Vuong, sat just feet away, composed but visibly shaken. When it was her turn to speak, her words were calm, measured. She spoke of loss, confusion, and the pain of learning about her husband's hidden life only after his death. She said, I will never understand why this happened, but I live with it every day. Next came Dominique Johnson. Unlike Jamira, Dominique never gave a confession, but the evidence left little room for doubt. She accepted a deal, guilty to conspiracy to commit robbery. Her sentence would be lighter, just over 3 years in prison. Some called it lenient, others called it fair, given her role was behind the scenes. In court, Dominique remained silent, her attorney speaking on her behalf. He described her as a young woman with no criminal past, who made a grave mistake under financial pressure. Still, David's family wasn't interested in character references. To them, she was part of what tore their world apart. There were no outbursts in court, no shouting matches, just the dull ache of finality as Judge Rana Beck handed down the sentences. Jamira Gallman, 24 years in prison. Dominique Johnson, 39 months behind bars. In the weeks that followed, public reaction was divided. Some saw justice served, 2 individuals held accountable. Others questioned how a man could be killed during a staged robbery, and one of the planners served less time than a standard college degree. But regardless of opinions, the legal system had spoken. And with the gavel's echo fading, the story transitioned from a case file to a painful chapter in the lives of everyone involved. 2 lives forever altered, 1 life lost, and a community left with questions. Do you think the justice system got it right? Let us know in the comments below. The courtroom may have closed its doors, but for David Messerschmitt's family, the real sentence had only just begun. In the quiet days that followed the final gavel strike, the media attention faded. The headlines moved on. But for those who loved David, every ordinary moment became a reminder of what had been lost and what had been hidden. Kim Vuong, David's wife, never sought the spotlight. During the trial, she stood with composure, even as she listened to details that no spouse should ever have to hear. Behind closed doors, though, her pain was compounded by 2 traumas: losing the man she married and discovering he had been living a life she never suspected. Friends say she withdrew in the months after the sentencing. No press interviews, no statements beyond what was read aloud in court. She later filed a wrongful death suit against the women involved, seeking damages, not for money, but for acknowledgement, for truth. Family members struggled to reconcile the man they knew, a loyal son, a hard-working attorney, a man with a dry sense of humor, with the one described in police files. It wasn't easy, but many chose not to focus on how he died. Instead, they remembered how he lived. Still, the public had questions. Online forums debated the complexity of the case, how someone with so much to lose could risk everything in a world of anonymity. Comment sections overflowed with empathy, skepticism, judgment, and confusion. David became a symbol, depending on who you asked, of privacy, betrayal, vulnerability, or consequence. The story sparked wider discussions, too, about digital footprints, about encrypted conversations, about how technology offers convenience and concealment. News outlets picked up on the deeper theme, how modern life makes it easier than ever to maintain different identities. Some experts warn that cases like David's are not unique. They're just rarely exposed in such a devastating way. At a small memorial in Ohio, where David grew up, childhood friends remembered him as quiet but bright. One classmate said, "He was always the smartest kid in the room, but he never made you feel small." There was no grand public tribute, no televised vigil, just quiet reflection, shared grief, and a question that lingered. What do we really know about the people closest to us? The answers were complicated, and for David's loved ones, they may never be complete. The story was never just about a crime. It was about choices, about the spaces between who we are and what we show, and the silence that follows when a life unravels too soon. As the dust settles on this tragic case, it's clear that the story of David Messerschmidt holds lessons far beyond the courtroom. This case serves as a cautionary tale, one that exposes the hidden dangers of leading a double life and the growing risks of engaging in anonymous online interactions. In an age where nearly every action, every communication is digitized, it's easy to forget the anonymity the internet provides. But behind each keystroke and click is a real person with the potential to cause harm or be harmed. Law enforcement experts warn that David's case is not an isolated incident. They point to a disturbing rise in cases where individuals use online platforms, often disguised behind fake profiles or encrypted communications, to set up meetings that can lead to violence. Detective John Carter, a cybercrime expert with over 15 years in law enforcement, comments, "These anonymous online spaces make it easier than ever to hide one's true intentions. What may seem like a harmless connection can quickly spiral into a situation that's dangerous for everyone involved." The internet, says Special Agent Elizabeth Ross, has made it possible for anyone to lead a life of secrecy, some of which can have catastrophic consequences. But it's important for people to remember that not all hidden corners are safe. The message here is clear. Digital anonymity may promise freedom, but it comes with dangers that are often hidden from view. It's easy to get lost in the safety of a screen, but the reality is that we're more connected than ever, and every interaction carries a risk. This case also underscores the importance of transparency in our personal lives. While many of us protect our privacy fiercely, David's story is a painful reminder of how, without clear boundaries, that privacy can turn into a prison. There's no perfect solution, but experts urge individuals to be cautious when entering any situation that feels secretive or without transparency. Communication should be open, especially when it comes to digital interactions. Trust is earned, not implied. And when things don't feel right, it's always better to walk away. Authorities encourage people to safeguard their digital identities, avoid online encounters with strangers, and always report suspicious behavior to local authorities. David Messerschmidt's case may have been an extreme example, but the lessons here are universal. Be aware of the risks that lurk in the shadows of the internet, and remember that every choice we make in the digital world has real-world consequences. In a world where privacy is more fragile than ever, what are you willing to sacrifice to maintain it?